Okay, welcome everybody to our first Good Neighbor training of 2022. And the first one this year is going to be Susan Caman. She is with the Wyandotte County Health Department, and she's going to talk a little bit about their Community Health Improvement Plan, which is a plan that was created after the community health assessment that was done in 2000, what year?
2017.
2017. And from that assessment and that plan came 4 areas: safe and affordable housing, jobs and education, access to care, and violence prevention. And so those are the 4 key areas in the CHIP that she'll talk about. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Thanks so much for the invite. And hello, everyone. Good to see you all virtually. Like Andrea said, I'm Susan Caman, and I'm the Community Health Improvement Plan, or CHIP. You'll hear that a lot, CHIP coordinator at the UG Public Health Department. And so I put together a few slides for you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know if that works okay. Can you see the slides? Perfect. All right. I always like to make sure. Sometimes it shares a little wonky. All right. So as Andrea mentioned, our Community Health Improvement Plan really aims to address 4 key areas for health improvement in Wyandotte County: safe and affordable housing, jobs and education, healthcare access, and violence prevention. And so in today's presentation, I just wanted to share a little bit more about just those 4 areas, kind of what projects, what strategies under those 4 large areas we're working to impact, and give you just a little bit of an overview on some of the projects that our community partners are working on, and some community members as well. And then I wanted to end just by highlighting a few ways that you can participate, or someone that you know if you think they might be interested in participating, or stay connected with the initiative and the work of the CHIP. And if at any point you have any questions, let me know. I have these slides, but I'm happy to hop off and answer any questions. All right. So as a community, I think we all know that good health really goes beyond healthcare and going to the doctor's office, and is really impacted by things like how affordable our housing is, and stress levels that may cause, the access to jobs and education that we have. Accessing jobs with a living wage can really make a difference in what we're able to buy at the store, the types of foods, and what we're able to access. Also, the safety of our neighborhoods. Again, that goes back to just in general stress levels, concern for other neighbors, and just community connectedness as a whole. Another important piece to that is economic investment in our community. So like philanthropy, government policies and resources, and how those funnel in to support services in our community. At the health department, and really as a community, I think it's important to look at health broadly and consider it, beyond healthcare. What are some other ways in which our health is impacted just every day? And so the image here that you see highlights those several sectors that we believe really set up the foundation for health and for a thriving community. And so addressing these sectors and getting involvement from government, from social services, from schools to impact health is complicated. And so a community health improvement plan aims to bring together all of these sectors and all of these community partners to come up with solutions locally to improve health and improve the conditions in each of these areas. And so we believe that our community health improvement plan is just one way to organize partners and resources in those 4 areas to improve health. And so, like Andrea mentioned, our health improvement plan stems from a health assessment. So you may recall back in 2017, the health department sent out surveys to the community on just overall perceptions of challenges that you were facing when it came to your health, or what you perceived like your neighbors were facing. And so we sent out, I think, over 2,000 surveys and received back responses on those. And then also held a series of focus groups to collect resident feedback that way, in addition to the survey. And so all of that information we took back and worked with a team out of KU to help us analyze it and like glean some findings. And that's how we landed with the 4 areas. So overwhelmingly, the feedback that we got from the surveys and the focus groups pointed to these 4 areas as health priorities. And so jobs and education, really looking at living wage jobs and educational opportunities that go beyond just higher ed, but also looking at like technical colleges and just post-secondary opportunities available to our students and our workforce. And then healthcare access, we heard from community that it's not just about going to the doctor, but just also ensuring that that access and those appointments are culturally sensitive and in the language that kind of responds to the diversity of people here in Wyandotte County. So, doctors that speak Spanish and that can sort of direct or have an appointment in Spanish and provide services like that, things like that were really important to folks here in our community. And then safe and affordable housing, a really big one, housing that's quality, safe and affordable. And then violence prevention, looking at violence, both at like the organizational level, so like within workplaces and also outside in the community with youth and other groups like that. And from this whole process, the community, the feedback that we got also pointed to these 3 factors that you see here at the bottom of the screen. So poverty, racism, and adverse childhood experiences. And so these 3 factors we ended up calling them our CHIP lenses, which is just the recognition that those 3 really impact our community's opportunity for health. And so our CHIP projects and strategies should be cognizant of those and be planned and implemented in a way that considers the impacts of those 3 big factors. So that's kind of the overview of the CHIP. We do have kind of a structure for the whole initiative that supports us kind of coordinating with other organizations and implementing projects and initiatives. So that's what you see here on the screen. We have a steering committee. The health department provides just overarching coordination and support. And then a big part of our CHIP are what we call our lead agencies. They're community organizations that help us coordinate resources, projects, and help us sort of make sure those are implemented in the community. So for jobs and education, that's the Wyandotte Economic Development Council. For healthcare access, that's Vibrant Health. For safe and affordable housing, it used to be Livable Neighborhoods, but we transitioned out to Crosslines last year with the help of Andrea. And then for violence prevention, that's MOXA. And so underneath these big 4 action teams, we have several subcommittees that work on different projects that were identified as part of the CHIP. And so are there any questions at this point? The next few slides I'll share a little bit more about the specific projects under the areas, but I just want to make sure before I start talking about those. I do see a question. I can't quite see who has their hand raised, but it is telling me someone has their hand raised.
My name. Oh, was there 2 hands raised?
No, it's you. Go ahead.
Why did we why did we move away from livable neighborhoods? And what had cross lines indicated that would be an improvement from transitioning from livable neighborhoods to cross lines?
That's a great question. So the health department or the CHIP initiative didn't decide to move away from livable neighborhoods. I think that was more of just an internal decision of livable neighborhoods to kind of transition the team onto cross lines. When the CHIP started back in 2018, Andrea and Livable Neighborhoods was really key in bringing partners together, having housing conversations and kind of convening. And so this next 2 years of the plan, Andrea, the health department, we all felt like handing it over to cross lines to really look at housing development, implementation of a few strategies, was just what made sense. I don't know, Andrea, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is that I became an office of one last year, whereas normally I would have another employee and maybe a couple of students or vistas. And so part of it was just my workload being able to handle this as well as Livable Neighborhoods duties. But Livable Neighborhoods focus is convening and building coalitions and bringing resources together. And when we started, there was nobody really talking collectively around housing. I mean, there was already a violence prevention coalition in place. There was already an access to healthcare team in place. There was already a group working on jobs and education, but there wasn't any group formally working on housing. And so a lot of the front end work needed to be done on pulling those groups together and starting that conversation, which we felt at Livable Neighborhoods was very much in line with what our mission and goals are. And so we did that. And I like to think we did it successfully. We brought everybody to the table. The coalition created a plan for what they wanted to do over the next 5 years. And we worked on building relationships with the Housing Authority and BPU and other agencies like that that were important to the housing conversation. And the next part of the action plan for the Safe and Affordable Housing Group is going to be on implementation. So it's going to be about, how do we get the homeless into, stable housing, and how do we get more houses built? That's not really, Livable Neighborhoods finds those things important and we support those initiatives, but it's not really our mission to build housing, or our mission is not to, specifically just work with the homeless community. So we felt like it was the perfect time to hand it over to an agency who has more of a housing specific focus. Did that help answer the question a little bit better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Are there any other questions? And thanks, Andrea.
On the violence prevention, do they also work with the schools? Because I know they've kind of implemented their own program, but it looks like it would also be a good match.
Yes, yeah, we do have partnerships with the schools and work closely with Thrive, which is an anti-violence youth project as well. But yeah, Enough is plugged into the work. And so our violence prevention team really looks at, understanding violence can happen in schools, workplaces, the community as a whole. And so we've got partners in each of those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I think, so in the next few slides, I have just like a couple of projects from each of the 4 areas. And so that might also give you a better idea of some of the work that's happened and what they've got on their way. So for jobs and education, that team specifically looks at these 5 areas here, which are really areas that were identified as barriers to accessing jobs and education in our community. Childcare was one of them. So, you know, the community responded to having lack of access to childcare, also childcare that's affordable as a barrier to them, you know, being at work all day. Language was another one. We've got a really diverse population here in Wyandotte County, and a lot of folks that are non-English speaking as their primary language. And although that's a wonderful thing and can create lots of upward movement, it does oftentimes present challenges for them to be able to find jobs and sort of find their place in workplaces. And criminal history, so being just as involved and having that on your record was brought up as a barrier. Also transportation to work and school was key, and then job training. So that's where that education piece comes in. So post-secondary, other credentials that are available for folks in our community. So those are kind of the 5 areas under the Jobs and Ed plan. And just a couple of ways in which the teams have sort of come together through to address the childcare barrier. The CHIP partners with the Family Conservancy, the United Way, and other community organizations, but specifically the Family Conservancy through their Start Young program. And they've been able to really do a great job since the start of the CHIP. The Start Young program has created about 266 new childcare spaces for children 1 to 5 in our community. And they also do a lot of work with providing training to childcare providers and centers and supplemental scholarships for families to be able to access, to afford childcare. And then this is the second one here is one of my favorite programs and projects out of the CHIP. We really used the Wyandotte Economic Development kind of partners and their colleagues who are businesses in our community and local employers, and worked with KCKCC, who provides English as a second language courses for adults in our community, and sort of brought those two together. So KCKCC is now offering 2 English ESL courses at 2 different Wyandotte County employer sites here in the community. So across the 2 sites, 25 students or employees are able to attend those classes during the workday. And the companies did agree to pay for the time, to sort of pay them for the time that they're there taking those classes. And the idea behind this is, you know, it offers, it's a win-win situation for both the employee and the employer. The employer is able to, you know, foster those skills with those employees, and they're able to be promoted and really advance within the company. And of course, for the employee, is also great. They're able to, you know, go to work and then also do some English skill learning and training. And so, like I said, one of my favorite partnerships and programs that came out of the CHIP, and we're hoping to apply for some more funding to expand to other sites in the community. But right now, we have 2 up and running, soon to be 3. So that's really exciting. And so the healthcare access team has several different strategies. They, you know, advocating for Medicaid expansion, just to address some of the folks that fall in that coverage gap. Increase awareness of local health services, transportation to healthcare providers, care coordination between primary care providers and behavioral health, and then also healthcare education to employment pipeline. So we've got a lot of our students here that are just really talented. And healthcare is one of our biggest industries in Wyandotte County. So how can we sort of foster those students' talents and skills and make sure that they, get connected to those opportunities here locally. And so that's one of the strategies there. And so the healthcare team has done a great job of doing a lot of communication campaigns in the community. You might have seen some of these and around enrollment efforts. So getting people enrolled in Medicaid, Marketplace, and SNAP, and other programs that are out there. And they've also done a great job of disseminating information about enrollment and other efforts in different languages. As you can see here in this one, we've got English, Spanish, Swahili in this one, and really focusing on the top spoken languages in Wyandotte County. And so from the enrollment efforts, from year to date total, they've been able to send over 269 new applications. And so these are people that likely wouldn't have benefited from these programs, even though they were eligible. And so that was for sure due to their efforts. And then they also created a healthcare career guide for local high school students. And it's really neat. It highlights local opportunities here and includes like the pay range, what sort of background you need. So what educational background is available. And they disseminated this guide with high school counselors and had an engagement event between counselors and some local healthcare employers in the community to really discuss opportunities for these students and ways to connect them to those. And so that was another key project from that team. All right, and then violence prevention. Like I said, there are different levels to violence prevention. The group focuses on creating safer neighborhoods. That's mostly through like park restorations, bringing in local art, fixing up landscaping, things like that. Promoting community connectedness. There's a couple ways in which the team has started doing that. And then addressing cultural norms that promote violence, specifically in the workplace. So looking at piloting like workplace culture initiatives and talking about those issues with large employers in Wyandotte County. So a couple of examples from the violence prevention area. Through a partnership with the KU Med, Thrive, Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, and others, the group was able to launch Revive, I believe, the summer of 2020. And Revive is a hospital-based at KU Med violence intervention program for youth survivors of violence. So youth ages 12 to 24 that come into KU Med's ED or emergency department due to some incident related to violence. They're able to be connected to the Revive program, and the Revive program is essentially it connects them to resource navigators or community health workers. So the youth is immediately connected to someone that is able to do an intake, sort of be there with them through their entire stay, and try to connect them to support services. That way, when they leave the emergency department, they're not just sort of on their own and are connected to social services or other supports that they may need and identified through the intake process. Of course, the youth has to sort of agree to that as well and want to have that support from that case manager or resource navigator. And then, as I mentioned, the violence prevention group also tries to, identify public shared spaces like parks or trails, things like that, and improve landscaping, repainting the building if it needs that, adding local art, installing park benches. And so the latest project that they did was in Clifton Park. And and they were able to work with Habitat for Humanity on repainting the building. This picture here is from that event, and adding some local art and some murals to the building, and installing some park benches as well. And the group is hoping to, add some history of the Clifton Park building and the site in there too in future, have a plaque, work with Parks and Rec on that to just improve the overall look and feel of the space so it's more welcoming for folks. And then lastly, safe and affordable housing. So our housing group works on a lot of different areas. One of them is working through the process for community land trust in Wyandotte County. As Andrea mentioned, looking at a coordinated response to homelessness in the community and working closely with Crosslines on that. And then educating residents on tenants' rights and responsibilities. Exploring a landlord risk mitigation fund, engaging landlords specifically in accepting Section 8 vouchers and other types of housing support. And then hosting the annual Wyandotte County Housing Summit, which is an opportunity to bring community members, agencies together to talk about different housing issues or priorities here in Wyandotte County. And Andrea would probably be able to share a lot more about the housing team, but I'll just highlight a couple of projects. Or
can I ask a question before you go on?
Absolutely.
Talk about would you go back? I've forgotten my words.
No, you're fine. The violence prevention section, or?
No, the one that you just finished. Yes.
Housing.
Community land trusts and co-op housing.
That's a great question. I have to do a lot of learning on community land trusts too. But essentially it's a way to, it's a different way of looking at housing. So it divides up ownership. You share the equity or the ownership of that land trust site with others in the community. So it becomes more of an affordable option if you're able to share it with other folks and share ownership in it. That makes sense.
Andrea, maybe it's something we need to discuss in a future program.
Yes, it would probably, I think it would probably require
I
the
think
experts in it and a more in-depth discussion for sure.
Yeah.
It's very complicated, especially when you start talking about how they're funded and that sort of thing. And so, I could see us having a larger discussion specifically around land trust and then other affordable housing options like the cooperative housing, which Quindera Homes, that's what they are. It's a co-op of housing. And so everyone who lives there essentially is an owner in the whole development. So that's another really interesting option for a housing model as well. So I think we could definitely maybe have a separate session just with safe and affordable housing and specifically talking about land trust and cooperative housing.
Okay, now the Quindera Homes are the 27th and Farrell?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
And is it Michonne?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Several. Let me see what I can remember because I had it up a while back. Let's start with the easy WYCO Housing Summit. Who is invited to that, and how does one get invitation?
So the Wyandotte County Housing Summit, we actually this year we did a 3-part series, and we mostly focused efforts due to the topic. We focused efforts around our Wyandotte County or the Safe and Affordable Housing Action Team. But we do have another Housing Summit session coming up on February 16th. So this was a 3-part series. they all addressed a different topic. The first one was on that homelessness response plan, or specifically about the cold weather shelter. The second one was a panel on housing development here in Wyandotte County. And then the third one will be presenting a discussion guide, which might be a really good, a good one for everyone here to attend, which, you know, it'll present this discussion guide and how to have conversations about safe and affordable housing with other folks in the community.
And we just shared the information with our partners and just had everybody put them out throughout their channels. So it was on Facebook. It was Livable Neighborhoods does an e-newsletter. It was in there. And then all of the partners that are part of the action team, we have about 100 partners, and all the information went out for them to share as well. So we kind of relied on word of mouth to push that out. But if everybody here would be interested, I would be more than happy to share the third housing summit information and the registration link. It will be February 16th. It is in the afternoon. It's from 2 to 3:30. But they are recorded, and the second and third should be up. The second one should be up on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the end of the month. And then the third one will be up shortly after the February one. But the first housing summit for this year is on our YouTube page.
Would you put that link in the chat, please?
Yes, I will do that.
Also, there was mention of a 5-year plan for one of these initiatives. Is all of this on the UG website, or is this individual links, or however it is? Can it be posted in the chat? Because every time we get a new administration, the website changes and it becomes more and more difficult to find what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, so the overall community health improvement plan is a 5-year plan. Right now, we're in year 4 of that plan. And we do have this information on our information about the CHIP on the public health department page. And then we also have another, we call it our community health dashboard. But I will share those with you. And actually, I included a bit about some of those links at the end of the slides here as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Nishan.
Go ahead, Ms. Blood, because the question just went out of my head.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, it seems to me, I hope that people who need this service are being, I mean, I don't need that service, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that do. And are they being brought in on this?
Yeah. And so I think all of the action teams and subcommittees bring in community organizations, other agencies that kind of work around these issues. And, you know, they use sort of either the patients or the clients that they have access to share about the work of the CHIP. But we could always do a better job, I think, of sort of getting information out there about specific programs and services of the CHIP. But I think each of the groups does, you know, distribute the information with their networks and with the folks that they see, the population that they see.
And Pam, like on the Safe and Affordable Housing Action Team, the organizations that are involved in the action team, there's community members, but there's also like Crosslines or Kim Wilson Housing or Wyandotte Behavioral Health, the Housing Authority, Community Development, you know, I'm trying to think of everybody, Community Housing of Wyandotte County, Mount Carmel, like all of the people who serve the community in and around housing needs are who make up the action team. Okay. So a lot of this information is then filtered back down to the people who need it. And the plan has been kind of developed through the work that those agencies do and what they're hearing from their clients, but also we've had community members participating. You know, for instance, in the community land trust piece, We identified people who were affected by housing and brought them in and kind of created sessions around the community land trust so that they became experts around the community land trust, and many of them are still participating in the action team work. So we're trying to reach as many community people as possible, but also making sure that those agencies working directly with clients are part of this conversation and can share information.
Thank you. That makes me feel better.
That made me remember my question. There was mention that you're in year 4 of a 5-year plan. Was a 5-year plan established in hopes that there would no longer be a need, or is there conversation on the next 5 years going on? And 2, it sounds like all the housing is focused on low income housing, moderate income, and mental health behavior and things of that nature. But what about those in between persons who can't afford rent any longer, don't have the ability to afford a new home any longer? And it looks like the pricing of homes do not sustain the median income of Wyandotte County.
Those are great questions. So for the first question, related to where we're at with the plan. So yes, the health improvement plan and the health assessment process are sort of cyclical process. So they occur every 5 years, and they're actually a part of, so our health department here in Wyandotte County is accredited, and doing a community health assessment and a community health improvement plan every 5 years is a part of that accreditation process. And so after sort of this 5 years for our current plan, we very much plan to continue. A lot of these areas we understand will continue to be priorities for Wyandotte County. We will do another health assessment, but we'll likely have specific questions around workforce, housing, violence prevention, and healthcare access to revisit those, as knowing that they were priorities that were identified in 2017. So does that help with sort of the health assessment and the health improvement plan?
Yeah, the plan structure, yes, that helps that.
Perfect.
But the other
right. And then the question with housing specifically, and again, Andrew, feel free to jump in. So just revisiting with the health improvement plan, these were sort of the areas that were identified as strategies by the partners that came together, and also what was brought up by the community in the survey and in the assessment process. So, our CHIP looks at these specific strategies here, and then these specific focus areas to try to make progress when it comes to safe and affordable housing in Wyandotte County. We understand, things like supportive housing for people with behavioral health needs and stuff like that are also a priority, and we work with folks in those agencies to kind of share resources, share what's going on. But I think the sort of ultimate point of our health improvement plan is just to make sure that we, as like partners in the community, so as organizations serving folks who may be struggling with housing, are all pointed sort of towards the same direction. So we all know, like, these are goals that were identified by the community. These are priorities. Let's focus efforts here in these areas.
So this was based on this 2017 survey, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we can expect to see a new survey before the end of the year, this year, or first quarter 23?
Yes, in 2023.
Because the inflation and the increase of homes may not have been addressed, or is that getting evaluated along the way?
Yes, and I would say that since I've been involved since the beginning of the original housing discussions, the idea of looking at, as investments come into the community, making sure that they're not like new development of housing is not pushing out old housing or residents who live there currently.
I
Um,
understand.
and also that there's more affordable options being made available as new developments come in. What we did find is that there are some legislative blocks to providing incentive or encouragement. I'm saying that with a eye wink. There's some state laws that prevent the city from making it mandatory that new development provides affordable options. But there are ways to, we have discovered in building those relationships and having those conversations that there are ways to work around that. And so one, it's part of the advocacy, part of our policy plan that we developed to advocate for those changes at the state level, to make it so that local governments could mandate affordable housing options with new development. But then also we know that, that depends on the state, right? So there
Right.
also needs to be work done at a local level to work around that. And so we've been working with the local planning department and having conversations with with them, and helping to figure out how can we work around that state block. And that the planning department has been very open to that and willing to work with any developers who want to do that. We also have developers at the table finally who want to build affordable housing in the community. And so making sure that we're pairing them with partners who are able to help bring those developments to life. I think you're going to be seeing that here, but it took a while to build that relationship and that coalition and that conversation, right? Before we got to a place where people actually wanted to build or create something substantial or tangible. So I think we're at that place, and it's going to be very exciting to see the housing changes that will happen in the next couple of years in our community. I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised at the conversations we've been having and what direction our community is moving in.
Okay, and with that in mind, there are two Kansas cities, one east of 635, one west of 635, and the cost of insurance east of 635 is markedly higher than the cost of insurance west of 635. Is that also being addressed in the safe and affordable housing? Because that is stressful if you can only afford to live east of 635, but you lose that affordability paying for your car, rental, or homeowner's insurance.
I would
think
say
that's-
not, I would say insurance is not a direct focus that we're focusing on. But that could be something that comes forward in the assessment that we have, or, I mean, I would argue to engage in the action team and bring that up. Because insurance hasn't been something that's been brought to the table yet. I mean, we've had the discussion about, we know that that's an issue. We've had discussions around redlining, but addressing insurance companies specifically is not something that was on one of our plans. And I don't know if you were going to mention this, Susan, too, but part of it also is, as you can imagine, when you bring together 100 partners, there's a million different directions that we could have went, right? Like there's a ton of different ways that the Safe and Affordable Housing Action Team could have gone. And we had to pick, in order to actually get work done and move forward and show growth, we had to focus on, a handful of those. So that's part of why you're seeing these. These are the ones that sort of rose to the surface and were of the most interest from the community as well as the action team. But I see a couple of other hands up.
Oh, I guess I better put my
Yeah,
hand up.
Tanya, did you have something?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was getting ready to put my hand up. So my question was, do you, or have you looked at the Section 8 vouchers, housing vouchers, for them to buy a home with their Section 8 voucher? I know they do it in Missouri, but I was wondering, does anybody know why we don't do it in Kansas?
I shouldn't. We shouldn't.
We do have Section 8 vouchers available to residents in Kansas.
Or to buy a house with, though?
To buy a house, I don't, that one I've not I didn't know that that was an option. So
Yeah, yeah, there
um,
is. There's a housing choice voucher for a home purchase.
well,
I can send you the
yes,
PDF,
please.
but yeah, there is a housing choice voucher. And I know the program was in Missouri, but I never could get them to call me back. So I will send you this, but I was wondering why it wasn't in Kansas.
Well, we can definitely reach out to our friends at the Housing Authority to find out exactly where we are with that in Kansas. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. And then Emily, that you it looks like you have your hand up.
Well, yeah, I just had one quick question. I apologize. I need to look at the report more in depth. I'm sure this is in there, but when talking about like the safe and affordable was in the report, I guess, did it find requested from citizens, or is this the committee looking at like affordability related to utility costs and health too? You know, like I know it's a very old building, but you know, when an energy, you know, efficiency measures aren't put in up front, you have to deal with mold and other health costs later. So I was curious if that's something this committee or task force or whatever looks at as well when it comes to safe and affordable housing. And again, I apologize. I will look at the report more because I'm sure some of that info is in there.
No, you're fine. So utility costs was something that was identified by the action team and through the assessment process as one area. And the team has, and Andrea again could speak a lot more to the safe and affordable housing teamwork, but the team that develop relationships with BPU and set quarterly meetings with them, with our admin, specifically just to learn more about, you know, their approach through the COVID pandemic, how they were responding, and sort of take that into consideration and relate to partners. I don't know, Andrea, if you want to add more to that.
Yeah, and so I think another piece of that, Emily, is home repair and home repair prevention has been something that comes to the surface a lot when it comes to safe and affordable housing. The issue that we kept running into is there wasn't any action team members or community organizations that are in the position to sort of lead that initiative, because that's part of it too, right? It's you know, we can bring an issue to this coalition, the Safe and Affordable Housing Action Team. We could bring an issue forward, but if everyone's just kind of looking at the issue and saying, yeah, that's important, we should do that, but there's no one who's able to take the lead and really push that forward to make sure that there is some kind of change, it makes it a little harder. So some of these things that you're seeing are areas in which agencies or individuals have stepped forward and said, hey, yes, I want to move that forward. I want to make sure that happens. So for instance, the tenants' rights and responsibilities was a partnership with Kansas Legal Service and the health department and Livable Neighborhoods. The Community Land Trust was led by Community Housing of Wyandotte County, who said, yes, we will lead that initiative. The Coordinated Response to Homelessness was Crossline stepping up and saying, we will lead this initiative. The Landlord Mitigation Fund is also something that a few of the different agencies have stepped forward and said, engaging landlords is extremely important to affordable housing in our community. So we will lead this initiative. And then the Housing Summit is just something that Livable Neighborhoods and the health department and a couple other partners have agreed to move forward. So that's part of it too. So if an agency ever comes forward and says, hey, we think this is important, we think this fits into safe and affordable housing, and we're willing to lead that discussion or that effort, you know, the group is very flexible and open to shifting when needed. You know, for instance, with COVID, there was a lot of shift that happened in regards to housing, because we had some focus that were things that were more long-term, but there were immediate needs needed to be met, right? And so many of our agencies had to shift focus on immediate need, one of which was a cold weather shelter, which is why our housing summit, that was our #1 session, was on a cold weather shelter, because that was an immediate need that happened to happen now. It couldn't be something that we created a 5-year plan for, like it had to happen now. So so that's why I would say this group is great in that it can flex with things moving forward. But as Susan will point out, and as part of her role, is that we also have to produce outcomes for people, right? And tell them, like, we actually are doing something. We're not just jumping from plan to plan to plan. So so that's where these came from. But Emily, to your point, I think that there is a space for an agency to step forward and say, hey, this is important. We want to help lead this effort with the action team. And I think there would be an openness to that.
Okay, thank you. No, that is really helpful. I know on the KCMO side, they're updating their climate protection plan and going through a process, and basically said the same thing. They're like, the city can't, do all of this themselves. They need like agencies to step up on some of them. So yeah, definitely get your point. So that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, I'll work through the housing examples here that we have touched on a few of these, and then just wrap up the last 2 slides, which are just ways to connect with the CHIP, and then we can use the rest of the time for any other questions or discussion. But yeah, so related to specific housing projects, and like I said, we talked about these, but working with Crosslines specifically on a coordinated homelessness response plan. And that's currently in development and in the works. There is clearly a need in our community. And so having, all of the partners that Andrea, Livable Neighborhoods, and the action team brought together in one table to have this conversation is really important. And that wasn't there before. And so moving forward with that. And then this is just a snippet from the Tenants' Rights and Education Responsibilities Toolkit, specifically for Wyandotte County tenants. And then we also talked about sort of doing a train-the-trainer model where we could host a few sessions with housing navigators and other community agencies, working through the code for, both the conditions that renters need to expect, but also their responsibilities and sort of their share of upkeeping the rental space and the home and all of that. So that's the plan with the toolkit and disseminating it in that way. And then, so the question about, where this information is and staying connected with the work, there are a couple ways to be in the know. So if you are really interested in some of the things we talked about today, we do put out a newsletter quarterly, sometimes every other month or monthly, depending on if there's an event or something that we want to get out to folks in the newsletter. But I put a link here in the slides, but I can also share it with Andrea and make sure it gets to you all if you're interested in signing up for that. It just goes to your email and provides a breakdown of projects across each of the teams and sometimes highlights events or other things going on. Or you can also participate in one of the action teams. Most of the action teams, actually all of the action teams, are still meeting virtually, which is nice because I think, you don't have to drive and get there, but it's an easy meeting link. And so if you are interested in participating in one of them, the best way would be to either connect with me, or the best way would be to connect with me. And then depending on where your interest is, there might be a subcommittee working on that or working on related topics, and we can connect you there. But meetings happen monthly. Some happen every other month. It just depends on the different area. There's those 2 ways. And then we also have just things that are out there about the CHIP. So we have a community health dashboard. This is just an example of that. It provides a little bit of background and data around where health is in the community overall and in each of these specific areas. It provides an overview of the strategies, the projects, the partners involved, and that's updated quarterly. So I do go in there and update based on like different projects that are happening and different things. And then there will be different announcements as well. So that's another link you can access. And then we also put out a booklet every year and then an annual report. So the booklet, like I said, it's a 5-year plan, and we do make a point every year to revisit the plan and adjust strategies, adjust projects based on where partners are, where the work is. And so as a result of that, we publish a booklet every year. It is actually a little book printed. We do have copies of last year's. We're working on the one for this year, and we'll be publishing that soon. But it just provides a summary of like the projects going on and the different areas of focus. Because like Andrea said, there are a lot of ways in which we could look at housing, violence prevention, and healthcare access in our community. But the goal of the CHIP is to try to focus efforts and resources around specific community identified areas. And then every year we do an annual report, which just, it's longer than the booklet, but provides an in-depth review of that year. And both of these are still being developed for last year, but will soon be published. And then I left my email in here and then my phone number as well. I'm always happy to chat about CHIP and connect you to the people that make sense, because it's my role is just the overall coordinator role. There are a lot of folks involved in the specific initiatives and other partners involved in the work. But that was the end of my presentation and spiel. It took the entire time, but I appreciated your questions. And Andrea, I don't know if you want to have a couple minutes of other questions or.
Yeah, if there are any other questions. And one of the things I wanted to point out too is, Susan, how many partners? So there's 4 different areas. Approximately how many partners are there working in each of those areas total?
That's a good question. I would say, so overall, so I mentioned there's those 4 areas, the 4 lead agencies. And then I do know for a fact across our subcommittees, so those like agencies that have sort of taken ownership or said, I will lead this strategy or I will lead this project. We have 33 of those agencies. So 33 of those agencies in the community. And then just in general, people that participate in the work, I would say it's over 60 for each of the teams at varying degrees, of course. There's varying degrees of involvement and commitment, but at least 33 organizations are really committed and taking ownership of 1 or 2 strategies in the plan.
And there's, I would say, I mean, at least on our housing action team, you know, we have hundreds of people who are connected to the work and that are doing grassroots work around housing that are participating. So, and I know that each of the lead agencies has the same thing, which is each of their groups. So any of these areas are interested to you, I think, you know, connect and find out what's going on and see where you can fit in or work on something that interests you. There's a lot of wonderful things going on with the CHIP. It's really neat to see. You know, I always get excited about the childcare. I used to do childcare. And so when I see the number of childcare sites that open up, I know how important that is to families that work. You know, just to see that there's so many more now available because of the work directly connected to the CHIP, and that we have employers because of the partnerships with the Access to Jobs and Education group. We have employers offering to pay to help with childcare, which is like such a really cool thing. You know, that we have employers now who are wanting to help pay for transportation for their employees and childcare for their employees. So, and education opportunities. So, I mean, to me, that's really cool stuff that's happening in our community, and to see that kind of moving through. So if you can engage in any way, I would encourage you to. And I want to apologize. I did say that I was going to link to YouTube in the chat. Unfortunately, I tried to get it up a few times and I'm getting an error. So I'm not sure if it's on my end or if there's something going on with the UG's YouTube link right now. But I will make sure I have all of your emails from your registration, and I will make sure to send you the link to the Housing Summit sessions. I promise I will do that. So are there any other questions?
And I can share, I know there are questions about the link to the dashboard and signing up for the newsletter. I can send those to you, Andrea, and then make sure those get out to the people here.
Okay, great. I can just do a general follow-up with all the links and information with everyone. I did put in the chat the link to the CHIP section of the health department's website. If you want to click on that, and I let people know too that when you're using the chat, if you want to open that particular link, just click on it. It'll open up in your browser and then just leave it up. That way you can come back to it after the meeting is over. Okay, I see something in the chat. Hold on.
Oh, it's
Oh,
me.
the link,
I was
okay.
just dropping the link.
Just want to make sure it wasn't a question.
Yeah, and then that second link is the link to signing up for the newsletter.
Great. Okay, well, we always try to make it short and sweet if we can in here. So we're a little bit over, but I appreciate you all joining us today for our first. If you registered for today, then you are registered for all of the sessions moving forward. You can pick and choose. So if you see the topic and it interests you, you can join us. If not, just save the link and use it for the next meeting. We do them the fourth Monday of every month from 6 to 7. It's a different topic every time. And we do not do them in November and December because of the holidays, but we do it from January to October. So hopefully we'll see you in February. And unfortunately, I've not gotten the final yes on that presentation yet, so I can't tell you what it is. But I will be putting that information out, and I will also send reminders to all of you who registered. I'll send you a reminder before the meeting with your link. That way you'll have it ahead of time with the reminder. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank
You
you all. I
too.
appreciate the
Thank-
time.
Bye. Thank you, Susan, so much. I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Great meeting.